finance. For about 4 years I was into accounts and finance. Then in the year 2004 I shifted to SAP, and as far as SAP FICO is concerned, I've been into almost every kind of activity of SAP. I've been into implementation, I've been into support, I've been into training, and as of now I'm into basically an advanced module of the finance part, that is simple finance. In fact, I'm into both areas. I'm doing my FICO as well as the simple finance part. Okay. So this is a brief picture about myself. Coming to our
Simple finance is an advanced model of FICO.
See, simple finance basically what happens is the back end of SAP, that means the database of SAP is Oracle database. Till the year 2011, SAP never had their own database. So in the year 2011, they have developed their own database, which is known as your SAP HANA. So once an SAP moves from Oracle database to SAP HANA database, whatever changes which are coming up in the FICO side, that is your simple finance. Okay. So for that, the basic requirement is you need to have a very clear understanding of the process of FICO actually. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so coming to our presentation, we'll divide the whole session into 5 parts. We'll talk very briefly about what ERP is, because unless and until we talk about ERP, there's absolutely no point in talking about what SAP is. Okay. Okay. We'll be having a brief introduction to the SAP part. Then we'll be talking about the configuration aspects of the FI module, what exactly is the course coverage, what are the topics which we are dealing with under the FI. Then under the CO, what are the areas we are discussing, and the career planning aspects. What are the different kinds of roles which are available? How can you plan your career? All these things we'll talk about in the career planning aspects. Okay. Okay. So coming to the term ERP, it's a very widely used term. If you look at any of the companies or any of the industries from the last 2.5 decades, many of the companies have been moving towards the ERP. The full form of this, we call it as enterprise resource planning. Now, when I say enterprise resource planning, the full form itself is giving you a lot of meaning about the word itself. We are trying to plan the resources of an organization. Now, when we talk about planning, we're not talking about any traditional planning here. We're talking about how effectively can we use the softwares so that the short-term objectives and the long-term objectives of an organization can be achieved in a much more better way. So objective is basically how effectively can the softwares be used. And whenever a company is moving towards ERP, its primary objective would be to automate all its business processes, whatever the activities, what are the day-to-day activities which are going in any of the departments, it would like to go ahead with automating of all these business processes. And apart from that, it would like to effectively plan its primary resources. When I say primary resources, I'm talking about something like men, machines, materials and money. Now under this category of ERP softwares, SAP is one of the widely used software. That means whenever a company is moving towards SAP, its primary objective is to plan its resources in a much more effective manner. It's not that the organization is not into planning, but whatever the available softwares which are there, of these, it would like to use these softwares in a much more effective manner so that its short-term and the long-term objectives can be achieved in a much more better way. So under this category of ERP softwares, we have number of products. As I told you, SAP is one of the widely used product. We have something like Oracle applications. We have JD Edwards, LAN, PeopleSoft. In this way, you have Microsoft Dynamics. Number of products are there. Now, these are all the name of the companies as well as name of the products. When I talk about SAP, SAP is a name of a company as well as name of a product. Similarly, your Oracle applications. Similarly, your JD Edwards, LAN, PeopleSoft. Now, some of these companies, like your JD Edwards, LAN, and PeopleSoft, have been taken over by Oracle itself now. So, literally speaking, in the ERP market, there are only 2 major players now. One is SAP, which is a market leader, roughly occupying, I'll say, about 65% of the market, and roughly about 30% of the market is being occupied by Oracle applications, and the remaining 5% part is occupied by many of the small softwares. Okay. Proceeding further, we're talking about briefly an introduction to the SAP part. It's a leading ERP package. So quite obviously, whenever a company is moving towards SAP, its objective will be to effective resources. SAP enables an enterprise to undertake its day-to-day and long-term activities in an effective and efficient way. And use of this package makes it possible to track and manage in real time the sales, production, finance and accounting, and human resources activities in an enterprise. It's not that we are talking about only these areas. Whatever the requirement of a company is there, all the requirements of a company have been fulfilled in one particular product, one particular software. Whether you're talking about sales or production or your finance and accounts or your materials, different sub-modules are there, of which we are trying to focus on the FICO part. We'll talk about that in detail as we move to a little further. So, till here, I hope things are okay, Sujit. Any questions or any doubts?
No, it's okay.
Okay, so proceeding further. This is a brief history about this particular company. The full form of this, we call it as Systems, Applications and Products in Data Processing. This was a company which was started in the year 1972. These were the 5 people who started it. This was renamed in the year 77, and before 77 it was known as Systems Analysis and Program Development. Now this figure is something which gives us a lot of information about how a process works under a non-SAP environment, and I've given another figure in the next slide which tells about how the same process is going to work under the SAP environment. Now, I've taken an example of a company here having 5 different departments. There's a finance and accounts department, there's a purchasing department, there's a production department, inventory as well as sales. Now under a non-SAP environment, every department will have a separate software. There's a separate software in the finance and account side, a separate software in the purchasing side, production side, inventory as well as sales. Now the basic problem in this scenario is, since there is a separate software in every department, the company has to invest heavily for buying this particular products. So I have to buy one software for the finance side, I have to buy one software for the purchasing side, production side, inventory as well as sales. So buying 5 different softwares is definitely going to be a costly affair for a company. Now let us say the company has taken the decision that they would like to go with 5 softwares, but that doesn't solve the problem. They have to maintain these products also. There has to be at least one technical person to maintain the product from different departments, because all the softwares are not developed on a common platform. Your finance and account software might have been developed on a different platform. Purchasing software might have been developed on a different platform. So you need minimum of one technical person to maintain these products. So because of which its maintenance cost is also going to be equally higher. But the most important and the biggest problem is the transfer of data. Let us suppose, I'll give you a small example of an activity taking place in the purchasing side. Something like purchase of raw materials. Now how does this process work under a non-SAP environment? First, this transaction will be recorded in the purchasing side. Let us say an individual A is doing that. The same transaction will get transferred to finance and account side. And another person is going to update that in the finance and account side. That means for a single activity, there are 2 people who are working on it. One person is working from the purchasing side and another person is working from the finance and account side. Now let us suppose a transaction is recorded in the purchasing side, but due to some reason it has not reached the finance and accounts. The person who was responsible for transferring it, maybe he has forgotten it, or maybe he was busy with some other activity, he could not transfer it. So what is going to be the impact? There's always going to be a data mismatch there. Whatever is updated in the purchasing side, that is not getting reflected in the finance and account side. And at that point of time, if finance and accounts department generates any kind of reports, quite obviously these reports will not give you the true picture. So basically organizations wanted a solution for this, and SAP has given a very effective solution by developing what we call as an integrated software. Now when I say integrated software, what happens? In every department you have SAP. Earlier we have seen that in every department there was a separate software. Now you have SAP in the finance and account side, you have SAP in the purchasing side, SAP in the production side, inventory as well as sales. And all these departments, they are all integrated or interlinked. So what is the advantage because of that? Since all these departments are integrated, you record a transaction in the purchasing side, system automatically updates it in the finance and account side. That means another person need not manually update the transaction in the finance and account side. It is getting updated automatically. So there is absolutely no chance of any missing of a transaction. So you record it here, it automatically gets updated here. You record it in the sales side. If there is any impact in the finance and account side, it automatically gets updated in the finance side. Similarly in the production side, it gets updated here. But the most important thing which we have to understand here is when a company buys this software is not automatically integrated. It will only come with requirements of different departments. It will come with requirements of finance side, purchasing side, production side, inventory as well as sales. Now as an SAP consultant, if you enter into an organization, it becomes your responsibility to integrate the departments or interlink the departments. I hope things are okay till here. Any questions, Sujit?
No, it's okay.
Okay, let's proceed further. Coming to the conceptual areas of SAP, it can be divided into three parts. One we call as an application area, second is the basis area, and third is the development area. Now basis and the development, these two are more into the technical concepts. When I say basis, I'm talking about maintenance of the systems, maintenance of the servers. The data has to be transferred from one department or one server to the other server, or you have to create user IDs and passwords to different users who are working in the organization. So that activity is taken care by the basis consultant. Development is more into the programming part. A widely used programming language is ABAP, Advanced Business Application and Programming. So our area of focus is not on the basis or on the development area. We are concentrating on the application area, which is also known as functional. Now when I say functional, different application modules or the functional modules are available in SAP. I've just listed out some of them. We have financial accounting, that's your FI. You have your controlling, that's your CO. You have materials management, the sales and distribution, production and planning, plant maintenance and customer service, human resources. I've just listed out some of the widely used. In this way, there are about 50 to 60 functional modules are there. So we are not going into all these areas. People with respective domains will enter into the respective functional or the application area. That means a person who is entering into finance and account side or FI and CO module is expected to have knowledge about how do we generate a profit and loss account and a balance sheet. That means the accounting fundamental concepts should be good enough to understand what is happening here. Right. I hope things are okay till here, Sujit.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Coming to FI module, what are the things we are covering under the FI side? We'll be talking about the general ledger. We'll be talking about the payables, accounts payables, which is in SAP terms we call it as a subledger. We'll also be talking about the accounts receivable. Again, we call it as a subledger. The asset management, again the subledger. We'll talk about what a subledger means after a few slides. We'll also be talking about the taxation concepts, the cash transactions, and the banking transactions as far as the FI part is concerned. But what is the purpose of FI module? Why is it that we need to understand, or why is it that we need to learn the FI module? The primary objective of FI module is to generate a profit and loss account and a balance sheet. Yeah. Yeah, please.
Venkat, can you go to the previous slide?
This one?
Okay. Yes, yes. See, for this tax deduction at sources, this TDS, will it come, the new GST is coming, are you going to put some light on this particular things during the training?
Yeah, we'll talk about it, not a problem. Because
this CIN, I think it will be absolute by March, I don't know.
Exactly, another max another, it may be 2 months actually. Okay. We'll talk about it, not a problem. We can definitely talk about the GST also. Okay.
Another bank transactions are.
Banking transactions is, how do you go ahead with check payments and all, how do you update your check numbers and all in your SAP system, all those things we'll be talking about.
Is it that you are going to teaching us on bank reconciliation also?
Yes, bank reconciliation is also a part of it. Okay.
Okay.
When you say bank, anything linked with the bank is a part of it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So coming to the FI module. FI module is needed to generate the profit and loss account and a balance sheet. Something which is required for our external reporting purpose. Okay. So in order to generate a profit and loss account and a balance sheet, I need to record my transactions in different sub-modules of FI, like the one which I have listed out in the previous slide, my general ledger, my accounts payables, my receivables, asset management. So whatever I'm recording in these sub-ledgers, that will be a part of my profit and loss account and a balance sheet. So in order to generate the financial statements, transactions are recorded in the general ledger. I'll be first recording the transaction at the GL level. So what do we do in the GL? What is the purpose of a general ledger? All activities needed to post a transaction are undertaken here. Now let me just take you to a MS Paint document so that things will be a little more clear there. So I said that my objective here is to post a transaction. Let me put it here. Let us say when I'm talking about posting of a transaction, I would like to record one transaction, a very simple transaction, something like this. I'll say salary account being debited and let us say bank account being credited. But how can I record this transaction in SAP directly? I cannot post this directly. There are some background activities which I'm supposed to do. Like I need to create a salary account. I need to create a bank account. So indirectly, in order to post a transaction, my first activity will be, we call it as creation of GLs. What do I mean by GL? My salary account is one general ledger account. Bank account is another general ledger account. Now in this way, whichever is the company which is moving from a non-SAP environment to SAP environment. Now when I say non-SAP, I'm talking about the existing environment. Let us say there is a company which is using something like Tally. They are replacing that with SAP. Now when they are replacing with SAP, as an SAP consultant, I'm supposed to know what are the GL accounts which this company is using. Something like a salary account, or maybe a rent account, or maybe something like general expenses, or stationery. So I have to create all these GL accounts. So in one way, what I'm trying to do is, I'll go for creation of a list of all these GLs. Now all these GL accounts which I'm going to create will be put under one common head which we call as chart of accounts. What do I mean by chart of accounts? In simple terms, it's nothing but list of all the GLs. List of all the GL. So my activity in the GLs will be first, I'll be starting with the creation of chart of accounts. Under that chart of accounts, I'll create all these GL accounts, which I'm talking about as salary account or bank account. Only after that, I'll be going for what we call as posting of transactions. All my day-to-day activities will come into picture only after I create my chart of accounts and I create my GL accounts. So things are okay till here?
Yeah.
The same thing I have put it here. All activities needed to post a transaction are undertaken. Preparation of the chart of accounts, under which we'll be going for creation of the general ledger accounts, then posting of a transaction, and depending on requirement, I'll go for generation of reports. Okay. So once I finish the GL part, I'll be going to the second important area, which is your accounts payables. Now when I say payables, the name itself is indicating something which I have to pay to someone. Activities related to purchase of raw materials, purchase of other items on credit are recorded in this module. I'm specifically talking about credit purchases. That doesn't mean that we are not recording the cash transactions. We do record the cash transaction and payables also. But in any organization, almost 80 to 90% of activities will be on credit and roughly about 10 to 20% of activities will be on cash. So in such a case, I'll not have any problem with my cash transaction because I need not keep a track of that. I'm paying the cash, I'm getting the material immediately. but it's a credit transaction which always become important because I have to keep a track of all these transactions, at least till the credit period is over. That's why we are trying to highlight more on the credit purchases. Now, accounts payable in SAP is treated as a subledger. Now, what do I mean by a subledger? Let me come to the next slide. This gives you a more clear picture. So whenever I'm talking about accounts payable, I'll be talking about a GL account. First, I'll be creating one general ledger account, which we call as sundry creditors. Let me take you back to the Word document so that it will be a little more clear for you here. I'm just going into a new document. I'll just quickly draw this actually. First, I'm talking about creation of a GL account. Let me put it here, which I'm calling as, let's say, sundry creditors. Now, what is the purpose of this? This is something which will give me the total value of creditors. I'll say total value of creditors. Now, what do I mean by total value? Let us say my company is buying the material from 10 different vendors. Together to all of them, how much is the amount which I'm supposed to pay? I'll be getting it from my sundry creditors. But let us say I want to know the individual values. Let us say I have purchased the material from X, I purchased the material from Y. I want to know what is the amount which is due to X or Y or Z. Now that information I cannot get it from here, the individual information. It only gives me the total value, the consolidated figure. To get that figure, I'll be coming to my accounts payable subledger. I'll come to my accounts payable, and here I'll create one record which we call as a vendor master. I'll call it as vendor master. Now, what do I mean by a vendor master? In simple terms, it's nothing but a list of all the vendors. A list of all the vendors. Someone like, I'll put it here, X, or someone like Y, or someone like, let's say, Z. Let us suppose my company is buying some 1 lakh worth of material from X, some 2 lakhs worth of material from Y, and from 3 lakhs worth of material from Z. Okay. Now my sundry creditors will give me the figure of consolidated figure. That means it will give me a figure of 6 lakhs here. What is the total value? And all my individual figures, what is the amount which is due to vendor X or vendor Y or vendor Z? I'll be getting it from my accounts payable. Now, whenever I'm creating this GL account or this subledger, this GL account will always be linked to the subledger. That means this general ledger will be linked to the subledger. My accounts payable, we call it as a subledger, and my sundry creditors is my general ledger. So I'm linking my general ledger to the subledger. What happens because of that? Always I'll be posting the transaction to the subledger level. If I'm buying the material from X, I'll post it to X account. If I'm buying from Y, I post it to Y's account. If I'm buying from Z, I post it to Z's account. This, because of this link, automatically gets transferred to the GL account from the subledger to the general ledger. So this figure is something which is required more for the outsiders. The stakeholders are more interested in this figure, right? And this figure is something which is required for internal management. Now both these informations I can get from my accounts payable. I hope things are okay till here, Sujit.
Yeah.
The same thing I have put it here. Vendor master I have put it at the top actually. GL I have put it at the down. Okay. It gets linked to this. Posting will be done to the subledger. From there it gets transferred to the GL. Okay. Very much similar to this is receivables. Only difference here is we'll be talking about the sales here. Activities related to sale of finished goods and sale of other items on credit are recorded in this module. Accounts receivable in SAP is treated as a subledger. Again, the logic remains the same. Only difference is instead of vendors, there will be customers here. I'll be creating one GL account, which we call as sundry debtors. This gives me the total value of debtors, and at the subledger level, I'll be creating a customer master. Nothing but list of all the individual customers. Someone like X, Y, and Z. Subledger will be linked to the general ledger. Transaction will always be posted at the subledger level. If you are by sending the goods to X, post it to X account. If you're sending the goods to Y, post it to Y's account. From here, it gets transferred to the GL, which further gets transferred to the balance sheet. That's how the flow takes place in the receivables.
Okay.
Things are okay? The same. The logic is the same actually. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
The next important area which we'll be talking about is about asset accounting. Now this is where we'll be talking about all our fixed assets. Activities related to purchase, sale, transfer and scrapping of fixed assets. So in one way, what we are trying to understand here is the whole life of the asset we are trying to understand here. The life cycle of a fixed asset becomes a part of asset accounting. Asset accounting is also treated as a subledger. But when we say subledger, there are some new things which come here. Let me take you to the next slide. So whenever I'm talking about asset accounting, the first most important thing is I'll be creating one asset master. Now what is this asset master? In simple terms, it's nothing but list of all the individual assets. Let us say my company is having 5 buildings. Something like building 1, building 2, building 3, 4 and 5. Similarly, my company is having 4 vehicles or 3 machineries. All these individual assets will be created at the asset master level. These individual assets will be linked to the asset class. That means all the buildings will be linked to asset class buildings. All the vehicles will be linked to the asset class vehicles. All the machinery to machines. Now this asset class in turn will be linked to the GL account. The transaction flow will always be from the asset master. If there is any activity taking place in building 1, you post it to building 1 account. From there, via the asset class, it goes to the GL account, further gets transferred to the balance sheet. Okay. And the most important thing in asset accounting, we'll be talking about the depreciation also. Depreciation will be specifying at the asset master level, the individual asset level. I hope this part is okay. Any questions here?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Now broadly, these are the 4 areas which we talk about in asset accounting: the GL, AR, AP and asset accounting. But internally, we'll also be talking about the taxes, we'll also be talking about the cash transactions, the banking transactions, but they can be divided into any of these 4 topics. Can be under the GL, payables, receivables or asset accounting. Okay. So once we finish the FI part, next we'll be coming to the CO side. Now FI is something which is giving me only a profit and loss account and a balance sheet. Now a profit and loss account balance sheet will give me the overall picture of the organization. It gives me how the whole organization is functioning. But that information may not be sufficient for my internal management decision making. That's where I come to my controlling, which is in general terms nothing but your costing or management accounting. Or data flow in controlling will be from FI. So whatever I'm going to record, I'll be recording it again from the FI only. This module is needed for internal management reporting. I want to generate my CO reports, reports by cost centers, reports by orders and projects. I would like to go with budgeting and planning. I want to compare the actual data with the planned data. And depending on the variance, I would like to take some action. But all these things, for all these things, I need some information. And that information, I'll be getting it from my controlling module. So let us try to understand what we are trying to do here. Represents the flow of cost and revenue, instrumental for organizational decisions. The key elements in the CO. We'll be talking about the cost center accounting. What do I mean by cost center? Provides information on the cost incurred by the business cost center wise. Let me once again take you to a MS Paint document so that things will be a little more clear here. Let us say my company has a profit and loss account which is giving me a figure of salary, an amount of some 10 lakhs. Okay. Now in my company I have a finance and accounts department. Let's say I have a production department, I have a sales department. There are some 30 employees working here. Some 40 employees are working in the production department. Some 50 employees are working in the sales department. Now as a head of finance department, I would like to know what are the salaries which are paid to these 30 employees, or what are the salaries which are paid to these 40 employees, or to these 50 employees. Now how do I get that information? I cannot depend on my P&L account, because P&L account is something which gives me only total salaries. But I need information department wise. That's where I come to my cost center accounting. What do I mean by cost center? In simple terms, a cost center is nothing but a department. My finance and accounts department is one cost center. Production department is another cost center. Sales department is another cost center. So cost center is something which is giving me information, I'll say department wise, or we can call it as something like cost center wise. So whenever I need information department wise, I depend on my cost center accounting. So I hope things are okay till here.
Yeah.
Okay. Now always information at the department level may not be sufficient for you. I may need information more detailedly. The same thing I have given here. I have given an example of salaries paid to finance or HR department's employees and traveling expenses paid to a particular department's employee. As I told you, always information at the department level may not be sufficient for me, for my decision making.
Venkat?
Yeah.
Venkat,
Yeah.
can you go to the back slide, the previous slide?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So basically, whenever you want information department wise, you are depending on cost center. Okay.
Okay, got it.
Right. Now, always information at the department level may not be sufficient for me, for my decision making. I may need some information more detailed. Let me put it in the MS Paint document here. Supposing, let me take you to a new, let us suppose in my company, I have a marketing department. Now this marketing department is conducting two activities. Let's say it's conducting an advertising campaign, and second, it is conducting an exhibition. Now as a head of this department, I would like to know what expenses I have incurred for advertising campaign, what expenses I have incurred for my exhibition. Separately, I want to know the expenses for my advertising campaign and the expenses for my exhibition. Now how do I get this information? I cannot depend on my cost center, because cost center will give me information only up to marketing department. For marketing department, what is the cost? I can depend on my cost center accounting. But within a particular cost center, for this activity, what is the expenditure? I cannot depend on my cost center. That's where I come to my second important area, which we call as internal orders. So what does internal order give me? Internal order will give me information, I'll say activity wise, or let's say job wise, or let's say project wise, within a particular cost center, within a cost center. Okay. So the same thing I put it here. Provides a means of tracking cost of a specific job, service or task. Example, marketing department wants to find out the cost incurred for conducting an advertising campaign. So I hope things are okay. Cost center as well as internal orders.
Yes.
Okay. So in both these, yeah, please.
This cost center is what you said is, I mean, what I understood is a department wise, right?
Exactly.
Like finance, how much they have done, marketing, how much they have done, and
Exactly.
internal order is something against the breakdown of that particular department expenditure, like advertisement, how much they have done in either, if I say in marketing, like exhibition, that is called internal order, right?
Exactly. So within a cost center, for a specific activity, what is the cost? You can know from internal orders. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so internal order is inside the cost center only.
Exactly. Inside a cost center. Okay.
Okay, and this profit
Okay.
center accounting?
Third part is a profit center. Now, in both the cost center as well as internal orders, we are focusing only on the cost, only on the expenditure. Nowhere we spoke anything about the revenue generation or the income generation. So that's where we'll be talking about. In the profit center accounting, we'll be talking about the revenue as well as cost. So let me make it a little more clear by coming here. Let me take you to a new document. Now, what do I mean by a profit center is, profit center is again a department. I'll say profit center is nothing but again a department. But this department will have two things. It will have revenue. Let me put it here. That means this department is giving me some income. Let's say revenues. Oh, okay, don't worry about the spelling. And there will be
Yes, sir.
some costs. Okay. So from this particular department, I am getting some revenues, but simultaneously there is some cost. Like a simple example is a marketing department. Marketing department is going into sale of a particular product, because of which I am getting some revenue. But simultaneously I have to pay some salaries to the employees of that particular department. That is a cost now. Or maybe a production department is there. Production department is producing, which is being sold now. There is some revenue, but simultaneously I have to go with some costs also. So I'll be booking my revenues, I'll be booking my cost also, and finally I would like to find out whether this department, is it a profit making unit or is it a loss making unit, or is this department giving me profits or is this department giving me losses. So I'll be analyzing things again at the department level, because a profit center is nothing but again a department. Okay.
Okay.
So a profit center will have revenues as well as costs. For a profit center, we'll be booking the revenues as well as the cost and do the result analysis for the respective profit center. But at times this information may not be sufficient for me for my decision making. That's where I'll be coming to my next important area. That's my profitability analysis. This is something which gives me information more detailedly. It will enable a group to analyze the profitability of market segments according to the following characteristics: products, customers, sales districts, or others. Let me put it here for more clear explanation. Let us suppose I have one product, something like this. Let us say I put it as something like Lux Pink. Now I would like to know how this product was sold in a specific area. So I don't know from which part of, where are you from actually? You're from India or outside India?
India.
Okay, so you are from which city?
Bangalore.
Bangalore. Okay, let's say I'll call it as something like how this product was sold in an area near the Majestic bus stop, I'll call it as. Okay. So I'm trying to analyze product wise, area wise. Let us say I'll go with one more parameter, customer group. When I say customer group, I'm talking about something like middle class, lower middle class, upper middle class, something like that. Middle class, or let's say, let me put it a little more serious, I'll say lower class or middle class, let's say, or let's say upper middle class, something of that type, so that things becomes little easy for my analysis for a specific month, I'll say July. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to analyze product wise, area wise, customer group wise, and month wise. So 4 or 5 parameters I'm taking into consideration. I'm trying to analyze this particular product. Now, why is it required? Because let us say this product has not been sold properly in this area for a specific customer group for a specific month. Then taking all these parameters into consideration, for the next month, I can plan my action in a better way. For the next month, I can always plan my action. See, if this product has not been sold properly, I can think of conducting some advertising campaign, try to increase the awareness among the customers, and try to push up the sales. But when can I do that? Only when I have that information that this product has not been sold properly. I can get from my profitability analysis. Okay?
Yep.
So, sale of a product in a specific area for a specific time period for a specific customer group. I'm putting one more parameter into consideration. Okay. Okay. The next important area we'll be talking about is the concept of integration. Again, let me take you back here. So what we are doing under integration is we are trying to link two departments. Let me put it here. Let us say I have a finance department. I have a materials department. I'll be doing some activities from the finance side. I'll be doing some activities from the material side. And at some stage, I'll link both these departments. What is my objective? I'll be recording the transaction from the material side and entry will appear in the finance side. Now, in this whole process of integrating both these departments, roughly about 20% of materials we'll be understanding. 20% of the MM side, which is normally taken care by the MM consultant only. But as an FI consultant, we are supposed to know certain things from the MM side. That part we'll be covering here. Okay. It's only after this integration process is complete, your entry will automatically appear in the finance side. Okay. And the same kind of activity, we'll be doing it from the sales side also. Some activities from the finance side, some activities from the SD side. So from finance side, we'll do some activities. From sales side, we'll do some activities. At some stage, we'll link both the departments. Activity will be recorded here. Entry will appear in the finance side. So till here, I hope things are okay.
Just a minute. Can you go to the back slide?
Yeah, sure. This one?
This one, yeah. You said the integration between FI and MM, 20% will be done by the MM consultancy and 80% will be done by the FI consultant?
No. I'm talking about in the integration. In the integration process, okay, the MM part will be only 20%. And the balance activities, your FI concept. That see what I mean here is basically what we are covering here is only 20% of MM side.
Got it. Okay.
Integration process, many of the things are there from the MM side only, but whatever we are doing in the integration process, that will cover only 20% of the MM.
Okay.
Which is
so
normally yeah, same thing with SD also.
Okay.
Roughly about 20% of SD will be covering. Okay. So this is something which we are covering in the FI as well as the CO part.
Okay.
Now coming to the career planning aspects. There are three major roles which can be taken up. Probably one of them you have already been into it. One, you can plan as a functional consultant. second as a support consultant, and third will be the end user. But what do these people do exactly? That's what is more important, because in order to plan your career, you need to know what exactly these people are doing. Okay? Now, when I say functional consultant, we call it as a functional consultant in an end-to-end implementation project. Now, what do I mean by an end-to-end implementation project? The process of moving from a non-SAP environment to SAP environment, not in just one area, in 2-3 areas. Let us say a company is there which is moving into SAP in the finance side, in the material side, in the sales side, and all these 3 areas, they are moving parallelly. Such a project, we call it as an end-to-end implementation project. That means right from the first stage till the last stage, all the activities we are trying to move towards SAP. Okay.
Yep.
So what does a functional consultant do here? Functional consultant is expected to have knowledge about the current business process. First, he should have some understanding about how the existing scenario is working, which he'll be talking with the various clients, and he'll try to extract that information. Okay. He's expected to design the current business flows into SAP. That means he's trying to understand if a scenario is working in this way under a non-SAP environment, how the same situation will look under the SAP environment. He's just trying to map both these scenarios. Okay. Based on that, his main task will be to customize the respective business processes. So a customization is nothing but, in one way, he is preparing the software for use. He's trying to bring the software into a usable condition, because SAP has got everything which any company wants in any part of the world. What is required for that particular company which is moving towards SAP, that will be understood by a functional consultant, and as per that requirement, he is trying to customize the software. Okay. This whole process of moving from a non-SAP to SAP can take somewhere between 6 months to 2 years, depending on the size of the company. For a small company, it may take a less time. For a larger company, it definitely takes a longer time. But once the software is ready for use, the role of a functional consultant in the project is over. He'll be shifted to a new project, or he can be shifted to a support project also. Okay. So this part is okay, Sujit?
Yes.
Okay. So once the software is ready for use, then it's not the role of support which starts. It's the role of end user which starts. End user will be using the ERP implemented in the organization. He is more like using of this particular software. That means his role will be, to a greater extent, something like recording of the day-to-day activities, posting of the general vouchers, recording of the invoices from the payable side or the receivable side. He's more like someone like an accountant or someone like a cashier who is into the day-to-day activities in the finance and accounts department. He's just trying to use the software. Okay. Now, this person was using a different software. Suddenly, you're asking him to come towards SAP now. So at times, the system can give some errors. It will give you a message that you cannot record the transaction for so and so reason. Now he doesn't know how to rectify it, because he's only a user. He doesn't know how to rectify a problem. That's where your support consultant will come into picture. The main job of the support consultant is to provide assistance to the customer or the organization where SAP is already implemented. So his role is, whenever an end user is getting a problem, he'll be solving these problems, primarily responsible for solving the problems of end user. So when a problem arises, the support consultant has to diagnose, analyze, and solve the issue. Now the question is, where do you fit in? Already you have been into the end user, so you have to think about the functional and the support side. Okay. So basically we have to cover all the 3 areas. We have to talk about what a functional consultant does, what a support consultant does, as well as what an end user is going to do. So roughly this course will take about 2.5 to 3 months. Roughly I'll say about 2.5 months. Okay. So one by one we'll be covering every area, and finally we'll be generating a profit and loss account and a balance sheet. Okay. So this is something from my side. If you have any questions, we can spend some time.
Uh,